I stared at the ruins of my sanctuary. 20 minutes ago, this was a climate-controlled restoration gallery in downtown Chicago, a space of silence and precision where I brought 17th-century oil paintings back to life. Now, it looked like a landfill. Cardboard boxes, stamped with the logo of a cheap supplement company, were stacked 6 feet high, blocking the fire exits. Packing peanuts covered the floor like toxic snow. And there, sitting on a $50,000 Persian rug I had spent 3 months restoring, was my older sister, Nicole. She was eating a meatball sub, and a glob of tomato sauce was currently dripping onto the silk fibers. My name is Lauren, and I deal with fragile things for a living. But as I watched Nicole wipe her greasy hands on her jeans and smirk at me, I knew nothing in this room was safe. Mom gave me permission, Nicole said, her mouth full. She said I needed a warehouse for my business, and you weren't using this space anyway. So we moved in. If you don't like it, call the police. She actually laughed then, a small, arrogant sound that echoed off the high ceilings. She thought she was untouchable. She thought the word family was a magic spell that granted her immunity from consequences. She was wrong. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Chapter 2. The Architect of Silence. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a fit. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing my pulse rise even a single beat. My profession requires a steady hand. One tremor can destroy a masterpiece. And right now, my life was the canvas I needed to protect. I am an art restorer. My world is built on chemistry, patience, and absolute control. I work with solvents that can strip paint or burn skin if mishandled. I understand that some damage is reversible, but some rot must be cut out entirely. Nicole was the rot. She was waiting for the explosion. That's how narcissists operate. They feed on your reaction. They want you to cry, to yell, to beg, because it validates their power over you. If I shouted, she would play the victim. She would call our parents and sob about how her mean little sister was bullying her. She wanted fuel. I decided to give her nothing. I looked past her, at the chaos she had created. My eyes scanned the room, cataloging the damage like an insurance adjuster. The blocked exits, the food waste near archival materials, the unauthorized commercial activity. It wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was a series of lease violations and safety hazards. In psychology, there is a technique called the gray rock method. You become as uninteresting and unyielding as a stone. You offer no emotional surface for the toxic person to latch onto. You don't argue. You observe. You don't defend. You document. I looked Nicole dead in the eyes. Her smirk faltered for a second when she didn't see the rage she expected. She saw nothing but a mirror reflecting her own mess. Okay, I said. My voice was flat, devoid of any inflection. Okay, she repeated, blinking. That's it? That's it, I said. I turned around and walked out the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it with a soft, decisive click. I could hear her laughing behind me, probably texting our mother that I had rolled over, that I was weak. She had no idea. She thought I was walking away to cry. I was walking away to burn her world to the ground, legally, methodically, and without a single tear. Chapter 3. The Investment of Blood. To understand why I walked away, you have to understand the dinner that happened 2 weeks ago. It was a Sunday roast at my parents' house in the suburbs, the kind of obligatory family gathering that feels less like a meal and more like a hostage negotiation. I had come with good news. I had just secured a contract with a museum in London to restore a collection of water-damaged Victorian portraits. It was the break of a career. It required a $300,000 investment to set up a satellite lab, but I had a plan. I would rent out my Chicago loft. It was a unique property, industrial chic and high security, easily commanding $18,000 a month on the corporate rental market. I laid the numbers out on the table between the pot roast and the mashed potatoes. I was proud. I thought, for a split second, that they might be proud too. Then Nicole spoke up. She didn't congratulate me. She looked at our mother and said, "Perfect. That solves my warehouse problem." Nicole sells supplements. Not the kind you buy in a pharmacy, but the kind you buy from a friend on Facebook who promises they will cure your anxiety and make you rich. She calls herself a CEO. I call it a pyramid scheme. She had boxes of inventory rotting in her garage, and she decided my loft was the upgrade her brand needed. "I can move the inventory in next week," Nicole said, reaching for a roll. "It'll save me storage fees, and the address will look great on my business cards." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. My mother set down her fork. That's a wonderful idea, Nicole. Lauren, you're going to be in London anyway. Your sister needs a leg up. It's the Christian thing to do. I looked at them. I looked at the $18,000 a month I needed to fund my dream, and I looked at my parents demanding I set it on fire to keep Nicole warm. There is a concept in economics called the sunk cost fallacy, or the gambler's fallacy. It is when a gambler keeps betting on a losing hand because they have already lost so much that they cannot bear to walk away. They think if they just put in one more chip, the luck will turn. My parents are gamblers. Nicole is their bad bet. They have poured decades of money, emotional labor, and excuses into her. She has failed at college, failed at 3 marriages, and failed at 5 businesses. Admitting she is a failure would mean admitting their parenting failed. They can't do that. So instead, they look at me, the solvent child, the one who worked and saved and built, and they see me as a fresh stack of chips. They don't love Nicole more. They are just more terrified of her failing. I am the collateral they are willing to burn, to prove they were right about her potential. No, I said at the table. The loft is a business asset. I have tenants lined up. I am not turning a multi-million-dollar property into a storage unit. My father slammed his hand on the table. You are selfish, Lauren. Your sister is drowning, and you are building a yacht. I left that dinner early. I thought that was the end of it. I thought saying no was enough. I forgot that to a gambler, a no is just a bluff they haven't called yet. Chapter 4. The Solvent Hazard. The timeline brings us back to this morning, 20 minutes before I found Nicole eating a meatball sub on my rug. I stood in the hallway outside my loft, adjusting my blazer. Next to me was Logan, a private security specialist who managed the building, and the Morose, a husband and wife executive team relocating from Paris. They were the ideal tenants. They had impeccable credit, they appreciated art, and they had already wired a deposit based on the photos alone. The light in the main gallery is north-facing, I told Madame Moreau, perfect for consistent illumination without UV damage, and the climate control is hospital grade. I was selling them a dream of precision and elegance. I put my key in the lock. It didn't turn. That's odd, I muttered. I tried again. The mechanism felt jammed, sticky. I apologized and knocked. There was no answer, just the muffled sound of a television and thumping. Logan stepped forward. Let me try the master override. He keyed in the code. The lock disengaged with a heavy clunk, and the door swung open. The smell hit us first. It wasn't the clean scent of linseed oil and varnish I was used to. It was the smell of stale fast food, unwashed bodies, and cloying, cheap perfume. Then, the visual shock. My breath hitched in my throat. The loft was a sweatshop. Nicole's 3 children, ages 6 to 10, were sitting on the floor in a circle, stuffing plastic bottles into cardboard mailers. They looked miserable. But what stopped my heart wasn't the child labor. It was where they were sitting. They were 3 feet away from my chemical storage rack. Art restoration involves dangerous substances. Acetone, toluene, industrial solvents. I kept them in sealed, fireproof cabinets, but the cabinet doors were wide open. A bottle of solvent was sitting on the floor next to a juice box. One spark, one spill, and this entire building could go up in toxic fumes. Mon Dieu, Madame Moreau whispered. She pressed a handkerchief to her nose, looking at the scene with absolute horror. This is, Monsieur Moreau began, then shook his head. This is not as advertised. I watched them back away toward the elevator. I didn't try to stop them. What could I say? Ignore the unauthorized commercial operation and the fire hazards? They were gone. That was $432,000 of rental income walking out the door. Logan looked at me, his face pale. Lauren, is that acetone next to the kids' lunch? Yes, I said. That was the moment the switch flipped. This wasn't a family squabble. This was negligence. This was endangerment. This was a liability nightmare that could bankrupt me and send me to prison if a child ingested those chemicals. Nicole looked up from the couch then, wiping tomato sauce from her lip. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed that we had interrupted her show. Oh, you're here, she said. You should have called first. Chapter 5. The 911 Protocol. The elevator ride down to the lobby was the longest 30 seconds of my life. I stood next to Logan, my hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally, irrevocably choosing myself. My phone buzzed in my pocket like an angry hornet. I didn't look at it. but I knew who it was. My mother, texting me that I was selfish, texting me that Nicole was just trying to build a future for her children, texting me that I had upset the delicate ecosystem of enabling that our family had cultivated for 30 years. "Are you going to call your parents?" Logan asked quietly as the doors opened. I stepped into the lobby. It was cool, quiet, and sane. "No," I said. "There is no point. They will just tell me to apologize." I pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls from my mother, 5 from my father, and a notification from TikTok. Nicole had posted a video. I clicked on it. It was a tour of my loft. "Check out my new office, guys," she chirped, spinning the camera around to show the view of the skyline. "Big things coming for my brand. Manifesting abundance works." She was taking credit for my success. She was using my sanctuary as a backdrop for her delusions, and she was doing it while my mother cheered her on from the sidelines. I closed the app. I thought about the solvents. I thought about the art. I thought about the absolute disrespect of my boundaries. "She told me to call the police," I said to Logan. "What?" "She told me," I repeated, my voice steady. "If I didn't like it, I should call the police. She thinks I won't. She thinks I'm still the little sister who keeps the peace." My thumb hovered over the keypad, then pressed the sequence. 911 911. "What is your emergency?" "I need to report a trespassing in progress at 404 West Hubbard Street," I said. My voice was calm, precise, professional. "The intruders have refused to leave. There are also hazardous chemicals on the premises, and there are unsupervised minors in close proximity to them. I am concerned for their safety." I didn't say my sister. I didn't say my nieces and nephews. I used legal terms: trespassing, child endangerment, chemical hazard. I was gray rocking, the emergency operator. When the police arrived, 2 officers. Looking serious, I met them at the door. I showed them my deed. I showed them my ID. I explained the situation briefly and factually. "Is the individual inside a tenant?" one officer asked. "No," I said. "She is a squatter who broke in." We went up. When the officers walked into the loft, Nicole screamed. "I live here," she yelled, jumping up from the couch. "Ask my mom. She gave me permission." The officer looked at me. I looked at the officer. "Does your mother own this property?" the officer asked Nicole. "No, but—" "Then her permission is irrelevant," he said. I watched Nicole's face crumble. For the first time in her life, she was encountering a boundary that couldn't be manipulated with tears or guilt. The law didn't care about her brand. It didn't care about her struggles. It only cared about who held the deed. Chapter 6. The Marketplace Betrayal and the Bill. As the officers were escorting a sobbing Nicole toward the elevator, Logan tapped me on the shoulder. He was holding his tablet, looking at something with a frown. "Lauren," he said, "where are the Louis XIV chairs?" I looked at the corner of the room. It was empty. 2 antique chairs, upholstered in original 17th century velvet, were gone. They were worth $12,000 a pair. "Maybe she moved them to the bedroom?" I suggested, though a cold knot was forming in my stomach. "I don't think so," Logan said. He turned the tablet toward me. It was a Facebook Marketplace listing, posted 1 hour ago. "Antique chairs. Great condition. Must go today. $500 for the pair." The seller was Nicole. The knot in my stomach tightened into a hard, heavy stone. She hadn't just invaded my home. She hadn't just endangered my livelihood. She had stolen from me. She had sold heirloom antiques for the price of a used sofa to pay for her inventory. "Officer," I called out. My voice was ice. The officer stopped. Nicole looked back at me, her mascara running down her cheeks. "I need to add a charge," I said. I held up the tablet. "Grand larceny." Nicole's eyes went wide. "I was just borrowing them. I was going to pay you back when my business took off." "That's not how theft works," the officer said. He reached for his handcuffs. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was a felony. By the time my parents arrived at the precinct to pick up the children, Nicole was being processed. They burst into the waiting area, my mother's face red and blotchy, my father looking like he wanted to hit someone. "Drop the charges!" my mother screamed, rushing at me. "She's your sister! How could you do this?" I didn't flinch. I reached into my bag and pulled out a document I had drafted on my phone while waiting. It was an invoice. "This is a bill," I said, handing it to my father. "For the professional cleaning of the loft, for the disposal of the hazardous waste she brought in, for the restoration of the rug she ruined." and for the market value of the chairs she sold. My father stared at the paper, his hands shaking. You are dead to us. Good, I said. That means you can't ask me for money anymore. I turned my back on them. I walked out of the station, into the cool Chicago night. I was alone. I had no family, and I had never felt more free. Chapter 7. The Architecture of Peace. It has been 6 months since I walked out of that police station. I am currently sitting in a small cafe in Kensington, London, watching the rain wash the cobblestones clean. My phone is on the table, face up. It is quiet. The Chicago loft was rented out 3 weeks after the incident. I had to hire a specialized cleaning crew, the kind that usually deals with crime scenes or hoarding situations, to fully sanitize the space. They stripped the carpets, repainted the walls, and removed every trace of the chaos Nicole had brought into my world. It cost me $5,000, but it was worth every penny to exorcise the ghosts of obligation. The Moreaus, the French couple who had fled in horror, actually came back. Logan explained the situation to them, that the squatter had been arrested and the security codes had been changed. They signed a 2-year lease, paying the full $18,000 a month up front. That capital allowed me to open my London studio ahead of schedule. I don't talk to my parents. I don't talk to Nicole, but I do talk to my Aunt Sarah. She called me yesterday with an update. Nicole pleaded guilty to grand larceny to avoid jail time. She is currently serving 2 years of probation and has a permanent criminal record. No reputable landlord will rent to her, and her brand collapsed the moment the mugshot went public. She is living in my parents' basement, along with her 3 children. My parents are broke. They drained their retirement savings to pay for Nicole's legal defense. The sunk cost fallacy finally caught up with them. They kept betting on a losing hand until the house took everything. Aunt Sarah told me they spend their dinners complaining about how ungrateful I am, how I abandoned the family. I listened to her, and I felt nothing. No anger, no guilt, no desire to call them and explain myself. I used to think that sanctuary was a physical place. I thought it was white leather sofas, climate-controlled galleries, and expensive locks. I thought if I built a perfect enough space, I would finally feel safe. But I was wrong. Sanctuary isn't a place. It is a boundary. It is the ability to say no without explaining yourself. It is the refusal to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. It is the realization that blood is biology, but family is behavior. I looked at the rain falling on the London streets. I am alone here, but I am not lonely. I have my work. I have my self-respect. And most importantly, I have the keys to my own life. And I am never making copies for anyone else again. If you have ever had to become a gray rock to survive a toxic family member, hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs to know that walking away isn't quitting, it is winning.